My name is Elara, and for 7 years I lived inside a sunbeam. That's what marrying David felt like, stepping into a perpetual, golden warmth. We met at a dusty, forgotten art gallery opening, both drawn to a melancholic landscape that seemed to hold unshed rain. He was all quiet intensity and thoughtful eyes, a contrast to my own perhaps too-eager brightness. Our love wasn't fireworks. It was the slow, deep burn of banked coals, radiating a comforting, constant heat. We built a life in a house painted the color of summer buttercups, filled with mismatched furniture, overflowing bookshelves, and the scent of his coffee mingling with my baking. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. We held hands walking through autumn leaves, kissed under streetlights, planned futures filled with gardens and maybe, someday, tiny footsteps echoing ours. I trusted him with my breath, my dreams, the quietest fears whispered in the dark. He was my harbor, my absolute certainty in a chaotic world. I was, unequivocally, happily married. The first splinter appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't infidelity, not in the way you might imagine. It was a change in his eyes, a slight distance when I'd recount my day. He started working later, buried in his study, the click-clack of his keyboard becoming a nocturnal soundtrack. When I'd bring him tea, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. He'd flinch, just a microsecond, if I touched his shoulder unexpectedly. "Just stress, darling," he'd murmur, pulling me close, but the embrace felt rehearsed. "Big project at work. It'll pass." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was David, my David, the man who remembered my favorite obscure poem and cried at dog rescue commercials. Then came the phone calls. He'd take them in the garden, voice low, urgent. When I'd step outside, he'd end the call abruptly, shoving the phone into his pocket with a tight smile. "Just work, Elara. Nothing for you to worry your pretty head about." The phrase, so dismissive, so unlike him, stung. My pretty head held a master's in psychology. I wasn't some delicate ornament. A cold dread began to coil in my stomach, serpentine and persistent. Was it another woman? Financial trouble? Something illegal? The David I knew seemed to be retreating behind a pane of frosted glass. One Tuesday, driven by a gnawing anxiety I couldn't suppress, I did the unthinkable. While he showered, I found his old tablet, tucked away in a drawer. He rarely used it, favoring his laptop. My fingers trembled as I powered it on. Guilt warred with terror. What if I found nothing? What if I shattered everything for a phantom fear? But the dread was stronger. I navigated clumsily, my heart hammering against my ribs like a frantic bird. Buried deep in the files, hidden within layers of innocuously named folders, tax docs 2018, recipes. I found it. Not love letters to another woman. Not financial ruin. It was a folder simply titled Project Persephone. Inside were documents, transcripts, audio files, photographs. My photographs. Childhood pictures I hadn't seen in decades. School reports. Pages ripped from my old, locked diary, the one I thought I'd lost during a move years ago. And transcripts of conversations. My conversations. With my mother, my best friend Sophie, even my therapist, Dr. Evans. Recorded. How? When? My blood turned to ice. Then I saw the emails. Dozens of them. Between David and a man whose name sent a primal, decades-old terror lancing through me. Silas Thorne. My childhood piano teacher. The man who, for 3 terrifying years between the ages of 8 and 11, had stolen my innocence, my sense of safety, my very childhood. The man whose face still haunted my darkest nightmares, whose scent of cheap cologne and pipe tobacco could still make me physically ill. The man whose conviction I'd fought for, only for him to serve a pitifully short sentence before vanishing. David was communicating with Silas Thorne. Regularly. The emails weren't friendly. They were transactions. Cold, clinical exchanges. David was paying Silas. Paying him for information. For details. For verification. Subject, verification request, episode 7. Silas, your description of the wallpaper pattern in the downstairs bathroom matches Elara's account. Proceed to episode 8, summer 97. Payment attached. Subject, specifics required. Silas, Elara mentioned a recurring dream involving a blue music box last night. Describe the music box you gave her in detail. Authenticity is key. Subject, emotional response metrics. Silas, interesting correlation noted between your account of her reaction to Chopin's Nocturne Op. 9 No. 2 and her current aversion. Further data required on trigger escalation. Payment processed. I stumbled back, the tablet slipping from my numb fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. The world tilted violently. The buttercup walls seemed to press in, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. The man I loved, the man I shared my bed with, my secrets, my soul, he wasn't stressed about work. He was conducting a grotesque experiment. He was funding my abuser. He was meticulously, cold-bloodedly, studying my trauma. Like I was a fascinating insect pinned to a board. Like the shattered pieces of my childhood were data points for his perverse research. The shower stopped. I heard the bathroom door open. Panic, pure and icy, seized me. I snatched up the tablet, shoved it back into the drawer, and fled to the kitchen, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. I heard his footsteps approach. "Hey, you okay?" David asked, his voice dripping with that familiar, tender concern. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. His skin was warm from the shower, smelling of the sandalwood soap I bought him. The intimacy was a physical blow. "You look pale." The betrayal was so vast, so incomprehensibly cruel, that words failed me. How could he touch me? How could he pretend? Was every tender moment, every shared confidence, just part of his data collection? Had he sought me out because of Silas? Was our entire marriage a meticulously constructed lie, a laboratory built around my deepest wound? Just a headache, I managed to choke out, my voice sounding alien, strangled. Coming on strong. He kissed my temple, that gentle press of lips that usually felt like a benediction. Now it felt like a brand. "Poor love. Let me get you some water and aspirin." As he moved away, I saw him. Truly saw him. Not my husband, but a stranger. A researcher. A man who saw my pain not as something to heal, but as something to dissect, to understand, perhaps even to replicate. The emails mentioned trigger escalation. Was he trying to make things worse? To observe the breakdown. The days that followed were a waking nightmare. I moved through our home like a ghost, observing him with new, horrified eyes. I saw the analytical glint beneath his affectionate gaze. I noticed how he'd subtly steer conversations towards my childhood, my fears, my therapy sessions, filing away my responses. I saw the hidden recorder, a small, innocuous pen on his desk, always pointed towards the armchair where I sat to read. The coldness of his deception was monstrous. My love curdled into a toxic sludge of terror, revulsion, and a grief so profound it threatened to swallow me whole. Confrontation was inevitable. It happened one rain-lashed evening. He'd brought home my favorite Thai food, lit candles, put on soft music, Chopin, ironically. He was being extra attentive, extra loving. Was it guilt? Or was it because he sensed my withdrawal and needed to recalibrate his subject? The sheer manipulation of it shattered my last vestige of control. Why, David? My voice was flat, dead. I hadn't touched my food. He looked up, feigning innocent confusion. "Why what, sweetheart?" "Why pad thai?" "Because you love it." His smile was warm, practiced. "No." I pushed my plate away. The candle light flickered in his eyes, but I saw no warmth there now, only calculation. Why Silas Thorne? Why are you paying him? Why are you dissecting my trauma like I'm some broken specimen? The color drained from his face. His carefully constructed mask slipped, revealing not guilt, but a chilling, detached surprise. Like a scientist whose lab rat had unexpectedly spoken. He didn't deny it. He didn't rage. He just assessed me. You found Project Persephone. It wasn't a question. His voice was calm, clinical. I should have encrypted it better. The casual admission, the utter lack of remorse, was worse than any denial. Why? The word tore from my throat, raw and ragged. He leaned back, steepling his fingers, looking at me with an intensity that was purely intellectual. Because it's fascinating, Elara. The human psyche's response to prolonged trauma, the resilience, the coping mechanisms, the way the past echoes in the present. It's unparalleled raw data. Your case Silas's methodology, however abhorrent, created such a unique, complex trauma profile, documenting its lifelong impact, how it shapes relationships, fears, even dreams. It's groundbreaking. I am not your case study. I screamed, the sound echoing in the suddenly cavernous room. I am your wife. You swore to love me, to protect me, and you're funding the monster who destroyed me. You're talking to him. About me. Love is a variable, he stated calmly, as if discussing the weather. A powerful one, certainly, influencing attachment and perceived security. But scientifically, it's just neurochemistry and conditioning. Protecting you. From what? Silas is old, harmless now. He's merely a source of primary data. This research, Elara, understanding trauma this deeply could help millions. The twisted logic, the cold, utilitarian justification stole my breath. He saw my horror, my devastation, not as a human reaction, but as another data point. Subject exhibits profound distress upon discovery. Note physiological responses: pallor, tachycardia, vocal tremor. Help millions. I whispered, tears streaming down my face, hot and useless. By paying a pedophile to relive his crimes. By tormenting the victim all over again. By lying. By marrying me. The word marrying tasted like ash. The methodology is ethically complex, I grant you, he conceded, as if discussing a mildly controversial lab technique. But the potential knowledge, the patterns emerging from your specific triggers, linked to Silas's detailed accounts, it's invaluable. Think of the predictive models we could build for PTSD treatment. He genuinely believed it. He saw no evil in what he'd done. Only science. Only progress. My love, my trust, my shattered childhood, they were just necessary sacrifices on the altar of his ambition. The man I loved didn't just die in that moment. He revealed he had never truly existed. He was a phantom, a carefully constructed persona designed to gain access to the damaged subject. Me. I left that night. I walked out of the Buttercup house into the pouring rain with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back. The warmth was gone, replaced by a chilling emptiness that felt like my true self had been hollowed out. The legal battles were ugly. He fought not for me, but for his research data, his notes, the recordings, the tablet. He argued academic freedom, the greater good. The court thankfully saw it differently. Restraining orders were issued against both him and Silas. My therapist, Dr. Evans, horrified and complicit without her knowledge David had bugged my bag during our sessions, became my fiercest advocate. The education was brutal, etched into my soul with acid. 1. Happiness can be a meticulously constructed cage. The most perfect facade can hide the most profound darkness. Trust your unease, no matter how small. 2. The human capacity for betrayal is fathomless. It doesn't always look like an affair. Sometimes it looks like love, wrapped in a lab coat, dissecting your heart for intellectual curiosity. 3. Trauma makes you vulnerable, but it doesn't define your worth. David saw my past as my only value. I had to learn I was more than what was done to me. The scars were part of me, but they weren't the whole map. 4. For the greater good, is often the mantra of monsters. Justifying cruelty with potential future benefit is a dangerous, slippery slope. My pain wasn't currency for someone else's breakthrough. 5. Recovery isn't linear, and it doesn't require a partner. Leaving David meant facing the abyss Silas created, alone. It was terrifying. Therapy became my lifeline, not a source of data, but a path back to myself. Rebuilding meant learning to find safety within my own skin, to trust my own judgment again, inch by painful inch. 6. The mirror holds the only love you can truly rely on. Looking at my reflection, raw and broken, and choosing to stay to fight for me was the hardest lesson. It was also the most liberating. It's been 3 years. The Buttercup house is sold. David, last I heard, is pursuing his research elsewhere, ethically sanctioned now, probably. I hope his data is flawed. Silas is dead. Good riddance. I live in a small apartment filled with light. I bake bread just for myself. The scent of sandalwood still makes me nauseous. Am I happy? Not like I was inside that sunbeam. That sunbeam was an illusion, a projection from a man who saw me as a specimen jar. But there's a different warmth now, a quieter one. It comes from within. It's the warmth of hard-won safety, of self-respect clawed back from the jaws of betrayal. It's the warmth of knowing I survived the most twisted violation of trust imaginable, not just from a monster from my past, but from the man who vowed to cherish me. I am alone, but I am whole, and I am learning, every single day, that the most important marriage you'll ever make is not to another person, but to yourself, to your own survival, to your own fierce, unbreakable spirit. That's the education forged in the fire of betrayal. It's a twisted story, yes, but it's mine. And the ending, I'm still writing it. One breath, one step, one hard-won moment of peace at a time. The silence in my apartment isn't empty anymore. It's full of me, and that, after everything, feels like the beginning of a different kind of happily ever after. Not a sunbeam, perhaps, but a steady, enduring dawn.